From the moment our daughter was conceived, dark spiritual forces were striving to snuff out her life. The prince of the power of the air and his sons of disobedience were bent, as they always are, on destroying anything which reflects the beauty and majesty of the Creator. The crafty serpent whispering in the birth mother's ear the alluring promise of autonomous freedom, just as he did with Eve in the beginning. Which, of course, is Lucifer's most seductive lie, because the longing for liberty is universal. Never will you witness a mob marching against it, chanting, "Away with this freedom!" A self-defeating gesture anyway, given that by boycotting one is exercising the very liberty he is trying to suppress. No, the question which takes center stage in Genesis 3, and upon which the very life of my daughter hinged, is not if freedom is to be desired, but how is it to be defined. When the Soviet Union was dismantled in 1991 and the Iron Curtain finally lifted, Eastern Europeans jubilantly celebrated the freedoms they had long been denied. Privileges which included indulgence in pornography, prostitution, drug abuse, and organized crime. So is this what true freedom consists in? Having the opportunity to give full vent to your most debauched desires? No, the freedom to do whatever you want, which is Satan's indecent proposal, is not freedom, it's anarchy. And anything, as it turns out, is better than anarchy, even tyranny. Just ask the recently liberated people of Zimbabwe. There exists then, at the heart of genuine liberty, a paradox. There exists then, at the heart of genuine liberty, a paradox, one which the deceiver often exploits, that true freedom is not the casting off of all restraints, but rather conformity to them. A dialectical truth alluded to by the Apostle James when he refers to God's moral law as the law of liberty, the law which, when obeyed, sets one free. Now, conditioned as we are by modernity and its obsession with autonomy, our reaction to this synthesis of law and liberty is incredulity. How is that freedom, we want to know? And that's because in our culture, liberty with limitations is no liberty at all. And thus we rush to liberate ourselves from the law's restraints wherever we encounter them, in government, in religion, and even, for some, in physiology, as they try to deny the binary nature of gender. Truly, we are a culture intoxicated by the infernal notion of a limitless liberty. And yet, look how grasping for such low-hanging fruit turned out for Adam and his bride, indeed for Western civilization in the 20th century. When were Adam and Eve most free, we might ask? Was it when they were in the garden, under God's restrictions, where they could eat of all of the trees except one? Or after they lost paradise and were free to roam around and eat whatever they wanted by the sweat of their brow? No, the promise of autonomy always ends east of Eden, in exile. It never ends in freedom. This is the chief insight of the book of Genesis, indeed the canon of Scripture. And it places before each of us a forced choice. We must all choose between the freedom from all restrictions and the freedom to a higher level of being. A choice which confronted Mila's birth mother the moment the plus sign appeared on the pregnancy test. Now, it's not that she didn't know what God had said concerning the image bearer in her womb, but it was an inconvenient truth, one which required great personal sacrifice to obey. And thus the promise to avoid such suffering and humiliation must have been bewitching. Similar to what Jesus experienced in the wilderness, I would guess, when Satan offered him a path to princehood free from the condemnation of the cross, a route to royalty that would avoid the Via Dolorosa. One can only imagine the duplicity that this young woman faced. Did God really say that the clump of cells inside you is a baby? That's not a baby. It's a fetus, a mere zygote, which can be discarded with apart from consequence. Are you really going to ruin your whole life over a ball of tissue? Unlike our first parents, though, this young mother refused to heed such vacuous assurances. For she was too busy meditating upon God's revelation that not only was it a child inside of her, but one which was fearfully and wonderfully made. She was too preoccupied with prayer, beseeching God to place her baby in a loving home. She was too engaged in trusting Him that her role as mere vessel was enough. In other words, she was too busy establishing her place among the heroes of faith in Hebrews 11. A list consisting not of perfect saints, mind you, but ones who, like Rahab, cast their lot with God regardless of what family, friends, culture, kings, or even healthcare professionals say. Men and women who choose freedom to rather than freedom from. A choice which determines their destiny, and one which determines ours as well.